perfect, but I was an ideal fit for that job because one of my specialties in the counseling department, some training, was facilitating groups. And one of the major components of my job at TYC was facilitating groups. We facilitated the groups 4 times a week.
Anybody stand out from your time
Well, there's not enough tape
Yeah.
in the world to tell you all the stories, but there were, for me, it was eye-opening again, and it confirmed to me how normal of an environment I grew up in, because I didn't know any children who were victims of incest, who had been abused unbelievably, who didn't know who their parents were at all, who had no connection to family. They came there as babies and they left there at 18 years old.
How long did you keep that job? And how long did you work with people in these situations? How many people did that kind of job chew up? I bet it's a revolving door.
I went to Corsicana. I moved to Corsicana actually I started November 1st, 1975, because my last day at Turtle State Hospital was Halloween. So I had my car packed because I was technically still, I was a nomad. I still kind of lived here. I still kind of lived in Dallas. So I loaded up my car, drove to Terrell, and started there November 1st, and actually stayed with my friend Kenneth Martin for 2 months until I found an apartment. I was there from November 75, and I transferred from Corsicana to a job in Dallas with the Texas Youth Commission. I went there in 1980. So I was in Corsicana a little over 4 years, almost 4.5 years. The Texas Youth Commission also had halfway houses. And they're located all over the state, predominantly in large cities: Dallas, Harlingen, San Antonio, Austin, Houston. I interviewed for a position. The title was superintendent of the halfway house, and I ended up moving to Dallas, getting back home, and worked for the Texas Youth Commission at their halfway house. I was director of their halfway house, and it was a halfway house for boys who had been adjudicated delinquent. They were essentially halfway home. They were either, their offense was not serious enough that they gave them the option of going to the halfway house. If you did well, you'd go home. Or the halfway house was, the guys had been to a TYC facility. They'd already been institutionalized. The halfway house was to get them ready to go home. And so we was a licensed administrator, had to take the administrator's test, and I think we were licensed like 30 boys, and so, and I worked there for 18 months. It's the only job I quit and didn't have a job. I literally got burned out.
Yeah. What was it? Just it's too much emotionally, too much time, too much neediness?
Too much politics.
Oh.
In my opinion, I was there to help work with children. I was there to help make a difference. Loved what I did. Just hated the politics. Would take an act of Congress to get a roll of toilet paper. You know, that kind of thing. When I know the state had money. I know that there were budgets that could, provide the needs that we had, and it wasn't happening, and I was tired. I had gone to school 5 years in a row, nonstop. I had worked almost 7 years now, nonstop, and I was tired. So I took a break.
So what happened next?
I didn't work the plan was not to work for a year.
Good.
I'd saved enough money. One Sunday on the way to church, my car broke down, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta buy a car. So that was 6 months into it, and I bought a car. And then I decided, I think I injured myself. Or I got sick. That's what happened. I got sick. I never really been that sick, but I thought I had the flu. I didn't. I just had a bad cold. Took me, a week or so to get done with it. And in the process of me healing, I kept thinking, you don't have a job. You don't have medical insurance. You don't have any benefits. So I thought, well, it's time to go back to work. I ended up I was substitute taught for a while. And actually I substitute taught predominantly at my old elementary school. Under my old principal.
Wow. How was that?
Enlightening.
Oh.
I saw another side of the man who I revered, the man who, if he called your name, you stood straight up. Yeah. I saw the more personal side of it because I was now an adult, and I literally could substitute teach every single day.
And so was he? How near retirement was he at this point? Not.
Gee, what's interesting is that he became the principal of my school when I started the first grade. So I knew exactly how long he'd been there because we started at the same time. I can't tell you when he would have retired. This is the early 80s. This is 1981, 82. So he didn't retire. I started, oh yeah. He retired not long after that because I started school as a first grader in 1958. So this is 58 to 82. He'd been the principal of that school. And he's the same guy that I told you the other day. You asked me about the political hub of the community. It was this elementary school. It was this principal.
So did he keep that kind of edge all the way into?
That was him.
That's
who he was. Very handsome, smart, firm man. So much so that I can remember an event, we had a program after school, and there were some boys out playing basketball, and these boys were technically the thugs of the community. They were just there, and Mr. Davis walked out and said, "Boys, it's time to go." He said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Davis," and they left. He had the respect of everybody.
Wow.
Yeah, so he just had that presence. So I substitute taught. I had a small janitorial service. I contracted with the companies and did that. Hated the work, but I loved the money. I started working part-time after substitute teaching. I worked part-time for an organization which was called then Girls Clubs. They were associated with Girls Clubs of America, but it was Girls Clubs of Dallas. They now are called Girls Inc. Boys Club. It's boys and girls clubs. Boys Clubs bought the Girls Club name, and Girls Clubs changed their name.
I've seen Girls Club Inc. Okay.
Girls Inc. was Girls Clubs of America, and I worked. I did sports at a branch in South Dallas. I did the sports, and in the summer, the job converted to a full-time position, and I worked with girls. I worked with the 9 through 11-year-old age group, which was interesting because the girls that were on my caseload in Corsicana were that same age. And here I am, a man working in an all-female facility. And ultimately became the director of, the director departed. I became the interim director, interviewed, and I became the director of that center.
You did that for a while?
I did that for 5 years.
Okay.
Which again was a very interesting situation because we would have, with staff and students, particularly in the summer, we'd have over 150 females, and I'm the only guy in the building, which was interesting.